What's happening, guys? My name's David, and I'm a senior developer advocate on the OpenSearch team here at AWS, specifically the open source OpenSearch, not the managed service. Regardless, today I wanted to give you a little bit of background on how I became a developer advocate at Amazon with no experience. And I will note that this is not the path I recommend for everyone, but listen along because I have some advice on how you can get started. So I started working initially as an analyst at a call center, and that was a really good way for me to get in the door with development because I was still getting my CS degree, so I walked into this analytics job and it was rough. They were running reports in Excel for hours. They were refreshing these reports, and I was like, this is terrible. We can totally automate this. So I whipped out my Python skills and started hacking up some scripts. And by the time I left that position, we had automated like 60 reports. We started with 10, 60 were being done automatically. When I started, we were only overseeing about 100 people. And when I left, we were overseeing 550 people's schedules and call center metrics, which was just super cool, all without adding anyone to the team, just through automation. So I've been doing this for about 3 years when I was like, you know what? I have my computer science degree. I've been doing this for a while. It's time for me to find some like real work, using C#, a real programming language, into web development, because that's what everyone else was doing, I felt like. So I found myself a job doing C# development for Dynamics 365, which is a CRM for those who don't know, and at a broadcast studio. And let me tell you, I hated it. I could not stand the work that I was doing. So it was about this time that I came across the word developer advocate on a thread on Reddit. And I was just hooked. The second I saw that, I'm like, I need to work to that level of engineering, what I believed I had to be in order to be a developer advocate. So naturally, I went and took another job doing C# because that makes sense. My next move was to start a blog, right? Because that's what developer advocates do. They write blogs. So I thought. Anyhow, I wrote 18 blogs in the first 6 or 7 months that I was blogging. And, some of them would do well, but most of them, they would just kind of taper off after the first couple days. Except for a few. And those blogs I wrote when I was frustrated and couldn't find a solution for a problem that I had, especially when I spent weeks looking for the answer. A really good example of this is fixing your SSL verify errors on Windows. So I had spent a week diving in on this and trying to figure out, what is wrong. And turns out when you're on a corporate network and they're doing SSL decryption, which is where they take incoming packets, decrypt them at the firewall, make sure they're okay, re-encrypt them, and then send them to your computer. So when they do that, there is a certificate on your computer that Python needs to know about in order to verify that it came from an authorized sender. Well, turns out Python doesn't look in your Windows certificate store, which is where it's stored. So there was a very simple solution to this, and that is to install Python Certify Win32. And it looks in your cert store, and everything starts coming back as valid. I spent weeks looking this up, and that blog to this day still gets 50 to 125 views a day. So those are the types of things I started really focusing in and blogging on. So it was at this same time that I came across an opportunity to become a moderator on a community on Reddit. And I was like, this is fun. I'm totally down for this. Little did I realize how hard it was going to be. That community had 500,000 people, and we really quickly realized as mods, we need a really concise set of rules to point back to whenever the community has a disagreement, or, someone wants someone banned. We need to be able to say, we banned this person and this is why, or we didn't ban this person and here's why. We would often get, why'd they just get away with a warning? And admittedly, being able to point back to those rules and describe why we did what we did earned us a ton of trust in the community. They generally would back us, and it was phenomenal. It was really important for us, managing such a large community, to have that nice, concise set of rules. So my most recent job, I spent a lot of time working on, solving problems that could come from either, servers or cloud instances or network devices, because I worked as network automation engineer and also worked as a DevOps engineer. And naturally, I was looking for the right tool for the job, And we had a lot of tools internally. We had, Logs.io instance, we had Datadog, there was Rapid7, there was SolarWinds, we had a Log Insights, which is a VMware product. I was like, we're using all of these tools separately, and admittedly, probably pretty poorly. I was like, nobody really knows how to use these tools really well. What if we were to take all of them, put them into one tool bag, and everyone learn that same tool bag? Then we can share learnings across different groups. I was like, that's awesome. So I started talking to different people and learning and finding out what's out there. And of course, I came across the Elk Stack, came across OpenDistro, and I was just talking to people about it. Like, look, we really should be doing this. And it was during this time that Amazon actually released their open source fork of Elastic called OpenSearch. And I was like, all right, well, what's the difference? So I reached out to their developer advocate at the time, Kyle, and I was like, hey man, you want to help me figure out what's going on here? So we talked about it for a long time, and we ended up co-authoring a blog, the difference between Elasticsearch, OpenDistro, and OpenSearch. And I was like, awesome, this is really exciting. At the time, there wasn't super much, mainly licensing and the availability of some security plugins, but as time's gone on, there's a whole lot more that's getting packed into OpenSearch. I'm going to try and not plug it too much here, though. All that to say, though, I was talking to people internally about this and hey, let's solve this problem. So it was a little bit later that I ended up reaching out to Kyle, and I said, hey man, how do you like being a developer advocate? And he asked me, he's like, why? He said, were you thinking about it? Because I thought you might be a good fit for the OpenSearch team, actually. I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Me? I'm just this rink-a-dink, I felt like little DevOps engineer at, a relatively mid-sized finance company. I'm like, what makes you say that? And, after talking to him for a little bit, I realized, I'm like, oh, I've been doing developer advocacy stuff for almost 3 years at this point. I had written a blog and been keeping up with it. I was moderating a community and earning trust. I was, learning and being curious, diving deep and finding out the details and then putting it in plain English for other people to see. So I mentioned that I wouldn't necessarily do it the same way, and that's because I wasn't really being intentional with a lot of it. A lot of it was just, chance. But you guys have the opportunity to be super intentional. So go out there and write your blogs. Write about things you're passionate about, because that's what's going to really set you apart from the rest, is doing what you're interested in and sharing it with others. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch this. Be an advocate where you're at. And if you're interested in OpenSearch, reach out to me. Follow our YouTube, follow my YouTube, follow me on Twitter, whatever, and thank you so much.